Today we'll be talking about the human body, and why we have to look no further than the human body to realize that there has to be a creator God. In my other video I did called "There is no creator God, really?" question mark. That talked about the universe. We're gonna bring it on home to our bodies, because over in Romans, the first chapter talks about this creation itself speaks loud that there's a God. The sun, the moon, the stars, everything we see around us, all the life we see around us is pretty clear evidence that there is a true creator God. In fact, God says that people are without excuse. We're without excuse if we don't believe in him because of his creation. But today I want to get into the human body, because the human body is just amazing. And if we just look at the human body, it just completely voids any belief that we got here by evolution from non-living matter. There's just no way that could possibly happen. And I know that, I want to try to keep this video short, and I want to give you some numbers and some facts. I'm not trying to impress you. I don't know you. I'm not, you don't know me. I'm not trying to impress anybody. But if I just want you to think and stop and think about the factual information I'm going to give you. These are facts. These are not opinions. Now, I know some of you may not remember from science class in school, and I don't remember some of that stuff either. But in doing some research, you get older, you start thinking about certain things, and we all get distracted in life. But if we just stop and think, that's the purpose of my videos, is to cause us to think, step away from the challenges we have of all the distractions, and think about these things relative to God. So there's two groups I'm trying to reach here, two audiences. Number one, I want you, for those of you who are believers in Jesus Christ, that you're in Christ, this should help you to just realize how amazing and awesome God is. I'm going to talk about that word awesome here in a little while. And those of you who are not believers, that you are either agnostic or atheist, but you're open, just think about the information I'm going to give you. Just step back and think about the facts of our body, and just use our brain, and think in a rational, reasonable way, logical way, as to how our bodies are made, and what it took to put them together. It's just amazing. So we live in a information age, and to say that we live in an information age really is a gross understatement, because we have more advanced technology and information today than at any time in human history. Of all the people that lived on this planet, the billions of people that ever lived on this planet, we today in 2024 have more information available to us than all the human history in the world combined prior to us. But all this so-called knowledge that we have, humankind, for the most part, we still grope in darkness over the existence of God. People still grope with that issue. Some people do, even though we have all this knowledge around us and all this information. Now, based on the latest statistics that I could find from different sources, roughly 70% of the world, we have about 8 billion people on this planet, roughly 70% of people on this planet do not adhere to belief in Jesus Christ as God, creator. And that's very important. So, and I'll tell you why when we get to the end of this, but the Bible's really clear. Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right out of the gate. And in chapter 2, verse 7, it says, and God made man from the dust of the earth, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and we became a living person. So it's pretty clear God made us, and he made the heavens and the earth. And if you go over to Colossians, the first chapter, it says, for by him, referring to Jesus, all things were created, in heaven, on earth, visible, invisible, thrones, dominions, rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. It's referring to Jesus. Verse 17 brings it home, says, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Now, I realize that a lot of people don't believe that Jesus is God in the flesh, was God in the flesh when he walked the face of the earth. They believe that Jesus lived historically. He was a man that lived historically 2,000 years ago, roughly. They don't question that. But the real sticky part that really gets people hung up is, was he God in the flesh? The Bible makes it real clear that he was. There's a countless scriptures that we could use to confirm that. But again, people can choose not to believe that if they wish to. John 1:1 brings it home even clearer. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And if you bounce down to the 14th verse, it says the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So it's clearly talking about Jesus. But I want to talk about the body and think about what I'm going to present to you here. Just stop and think about this. This stuff is really amazing. So, the word awesome is thrown around. I noticed in the past 15 or so years, the word awesome is thrown around very flippantly for ordinary things in life regarding to people and things of humans. And when compared to the things of God, which I'm going to present to you, the word is really misapplied compared to the things of God. I mean, for instance, people say, well, that was an awesome game or an awesome meal or awesome movie or whatever. Well, it doesn't really, the word awesome by definition means a reverential fear, to stand in awe or dread inspired by something great or terrific. So to use that word for just ordinary everyday things, it's just misapplied. And it's people can say what they want to say, but I try to keep things in a perspective of from God's point of view. So if we step back and examine and look at the details of our bodies that we walk around in every day, we don't think about it. There is no comparison to our bodies to these other things that we call awesome. Psalm 139:14 puts it this way. It says, I thank you, I give thanks, because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That's the King James Version. The New American Standard does use the word awesome, but it's referring to God and not things, of us humans in terms of what we do. So let's talk about our incredible cells in our body. We have an enormous amount of cells in our body. So think about this. If the device that you are watching me on, your laptop, your cell phone, your desktop, whatever you might be watching me on, and I know that the device that I'm recording this on was made by people, the mind. People's minds makes everything that we've seen, has made it. So you wouldn't say that device that you're watching me on just popped into existence by chance. Of course not. So why would we think that our human bodies just got here by chance? So we have trillions, not million, not billions, but trillions of tiny microscopic living cells within our body. And they operate thousands of separate microscopic interconnected systems that are essential for energy, for growth, motion, reproduction, waste disposal, and so forth. These cells in our bodies were once referred to as simple cells by the scientific community as a whole. But since the development of the electron microscope in around 1920s to 30s, it was developed, invented and developed, it just blew everything wide open in terms of what we now know about the cells. We realized they're not simple cells. So in 1963, scientists were able to penetrate the cellular wall and examine the interior of a cell. Prior to that, they thought the cell was just more like a jelly-like substance. But they discovered this in 1963. It was a gentleman by the name of George E. Palade. He was a cell biologist and a professor at the Rockefeller Institute in New York. And he made an extraordinary discovery. And it really transformed the science of biology. He received a Nobel Prize in physiology and medicine in 1974, along with two other people. But what he discovered was an incredibly complex system operating in the cell, which is the basis of all life forms. So let's talk about that for a minute, because we have a remarkable microscopic universe within us. And I know we don't think about this every day because we are so busy, all of us, we have to make a living or whatever we do, school, work, whatever, all the distractions that we have. We don't stop and think about, there's a lot of things going on in our bodies. That is an understatement. So we have a massive amount of microscopic sized tubes that are essential within the cells. And the cell is the most complex and exquisite system ever found in the universe. Many scientists believe that. So the surface of the incredible tiny cells in our bodies, they're protected by a membrane, the wall. And that membrane that protects our cell is less than 1 millionth of an inch thick. Think about that. That membrane is less than 1 millionth of an inch thick. And yet that cell wall controls everything, the entry, the exit of thousands of chemicals, enzymes, proteins that are essential to life. So how does that just happen by chance? It just can't. So it is estimated through study and technology, again, we have 60 trillion cells in our body. That's with a T. So whenever one of those cells needs something vital to survive, like a chemical or enzyme or vitamin or whatever the need might be to excrete harmful waste product, the cells communicate with the rest of our body. All those trillions of cells. The bloodstream then sends its vital fluid through thousands of miles of veins, arteries, and capillaries. When I first read that years ago, I'm thinking, how does all this stuff squeeze into our bodies? If you look at the blog that I wrote on this, you'll see a picture of a skeleton, so to speak, or a human body with all these, veins and capillaries and arteries going through it. It's thousands of miles of this in our bodies. And I'm thinking, how could all that be crammed in here? But it is. So one of the most effective ways to really understand the enormous complexity of our bodies, the cells, is to think of them. They're microscopic in size. We can't even see them with our naked eye. They perform functions that include energy generation, defense against biological invaders, intricate communication to trillions of other cells simultaneously, and they transport systems to move nutrients throughout our body within the cell, and many more elaborate activities. So how does that happen just by chance? It doesn't. The human cell is made up of literally thousands of intricate proteins that are absolutely essential for life to continue. These thousands of proteins are themselves composed of over 1,000 amino acid molecules. And they must be arranged in a precise sequence that could never have happened by just chance. They have to be in a precise sequence, these proteins, these amino acids. So honest biologists who examine this and study this, they realize that a single arrangement of these proteins and amino acids, they were purposely arranged in a precise pattern on purpose. So there's a lot more we could say about the cell. I'm going to go to the brain now because I want to keep this short if I can possibly keep it within 20 minutes. Take the brain. Now, our brain, there's a gentleman by the name of Isaac Asimov. I'll spell it Asimov. I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but he was a biologist. He's passed away, and an atheist. But he wrote this. He said, in man is a 3-pound brain. As far as we know, he says, is the most complex and orderly arrangement of matter in the universe. The complexity, and this is me now, the complexity and the intricate order of our brain, it just defies our ability to really comprehend. It's just overwhelming. Now, the human brain, I'm going to throw some numbers at you, and this is really staggering. The human brain consists of about 10,000 million nerve cells, and each of those puts out between 10,000 and 100,000 connecting fibers, which contacts other nerve cells. So altogether, the total number of connections in our brain approaches 1,000 million. Yeah, that's crazy. And those kind of numbers are beyond our ability to really comprehend. Now, we have about 100 billion neurons in our brain, they estimate. 100 billion neurons in our brain. 100 billion neurons. And they are linked intricately together in a complex network in our brain. Everyone is connected to others in a staggering number of complicated interconnections. So every single one of those neurons in our brain is directly connected to more than 50,000 other neurons. Think about that. Through an incredibly small fibers, allowing for instantaneous transfer of messages across our brain. Now think about this number. There are more than 1 quadrillion. Gee, come on, really? There are more than 1 quadrillion intricate electrical connections within our brain. Yeah, how many zeros is that? That's just crazy. Now think about that. That is awesome. Not the hamburger I just ate. Okay, that's awesome. Now let's talk about the eye for a moment. I'll go to the eye. We can spend another few minutes, quite a while on the brain, but let's go to the eye. Now, evolutionists believe that the complex systems found in living in us, they were formed accidentally. So let's take the eye for an example. The genetic DNA code that governs our eye, it programs our bodies. When we were in our mother's womb, we have this genetic code that programs the baby's eye in the womb to begin growing optical nerves simultaneously from the center of the brain and then and from the eye. So they have to connect. So it's about 1 million microscopic optic nerves begin growing from the eye through the flesh toward the optical nerve section of our brain when we were babies in the womb. Each of these 1 million optical nerves must find and match up to its precise mate coming from the brain to the eye, because the eye is part of the brain, in order for us to see perfectly. They have to match. How does that happen by chance? Anybody that thinks that happens by chance, you must still believe in Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. That's just ridiculous that it happened by chance. So the degree of complexity of the various parts of our eye makes the evolutionary theory impossible. Now, the reason why I'm sharing all this is because over in 1 Peter 3:15, we are told as believers we should be able to give a defense to people for what we believe. It's called the category of that area is called apologetics. We're not apologizing, but it's all falls under apologetics. That's an area that I like that area because there's so many people out there that have so many different belief systems, but these things are pretty clear. So the eye, even Darwin himself, Darwin didn't start evolution. He popularized it when he wrote the book in 1859, The Origin of the Species. But he himself admitted that the intricate engineering in the eye was so complex and specialized, he could not even imagine how the eye could have developed through natural selection. That's what he said. I'm going to read his quote to you. He said, to suppose that the eye, with all its amenable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, to emitting sound, to emitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection. Listen to this. He said, to think that, he says, I freely confess, is absurd to the highest degree. So what Darwin is saying that, to think that the eye could have just happened through natural selection, he says it's absurd to the highest degree. But yet, despite that, he went on to postulate his theory about evolution and maintain that the human body still evolved. Well, if the eye couldn't have evolved, based on what he said, how could the whole human body evolve? Doesn't make any sense. So a person must have a strong preconceived bias against special creation and God to really just ignore this and come to the conclusion that the body just formed through natural selection or evolution. So he's writing back in the 1800s. He didn't have the advantage of all the technology and knowledge that we have today, which makes his scientific theory just totally null and void. They have a museum for Darwin over there in Britain, the Natural History Museum. They have a statue of him out in front, so to speak. Well, they have a whole wing devoted to him. And I don't have anything against the guy, but he's led millions of people astray if they believe in evolution. So the consequences of that theory of evolution is far-reaching and it's eternally damaging because millions of people still believe this, and it's not based on any sound evidence. Now, one of the greatest problems facing those who deny the Creator God is trying to explain how natural selection or random mutation could evolve such a phenomenally complex organ as the eye. They can't even explain that. So let's talk about this, a few more wonders of God's creation. Whereas millions of other complex functions are performed by our body. For instance, reproduction. Over 200 million microscopic sperm that are released from the male, your father, my father, to begin a critical journey of about 4 to 6 minutes to get to the woman's egg, the ova. Okay? Out of that 200 million sperm cells, only one makes it, and that one created you and I, made you and I. How does that happen? Okay, I could spend another enough of time on that. We'll go to the liver. The liver is a necessary organ in the body, our liver. We don't think about that, but it purifies our bloodstream. Thousands of years before this was even known, God had it recorded in the Bible. The scriptures maintain that the blood is an essential factor in our life. It's essential. Leviticus 7:11 says this, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. The life of the flesh is in the blood. Now think about this. That was recorded 3,000 years ago, roughly. And the doctors, the medical community didn't even realize that until 1616, when a gentleman by the name of Dr. William Harvey made that discovery about the essential role of the circulation of blood in our bodies. So think about this. The food we eat and the drinks that we drink, if they were injected into our bloodstream without being processed by the liver, it would be fatal. It would kill us. And that liver has only about 10 to 12 seconds to process these chemicals, all the things that it has to process and analyze before it enters the bloodstream. Less than 12 seconds. If it doesn't do that, we're dead. How does that happen? By chance. So it's unreasonable, and you have to be really biased to think that this just happened by chance. So what's the conclusion of all of this? The conclusion is this. Think about how amazing our bodies are. And I know there's questions we have about God and life. And I think the two biggest issues that people have with God is death and evil. I'm going to do a blog and a video on that. Those two. I'm going to combine those two because people get hung up on that. And there's answers to that. And there's some things we'll never understand. But we can't just ignore the body and all the intricate complexities of our cells and just ignore that and think there's no God. Is this God here by chance? It's just not possible. So I encourage those of you who are believers to be encouraged and think about how magnificent and awesome God is through his creation, our bodies, and the things we see around us. And for those of you who aren't, I ask you to please consider the facts of the complex nature of our bodies and how there's no way in the world our bodies could have got here by chance. And think about that. Think about that, because we are going to stand before God one day, face to face with God. And we're going to stand there in our own so-called goodness or righteousness or in his righteousness. Jesus died to give us his righteousness so we could stand before God in his righteousness. 2 Corinthians 5:21 puts it this way. For he, God, made him, Jesus, to be no sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. I pray those of you who have taken the time to watch this video that you receive Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior. This is not about religion, it's about relationship. Have a good day.